All right, so let's talk about use cases. Because technology, that's all well and good, right? But how does this apply in your industry? So I do have some examples. This is not exhaustive by any stretch. I was trying to trim it down to some of the more recent work we've done, but frankly, we've worked across many industries. So if you have an industry-specific question, I'd be happy to answer that. Or if you want to chat about how this applies in your particular role in your business, we can talk about that too. But let's just talk through a handful here, and I'll give as much detail as I can. Right, these are real client opportunities that we've assisted our clients with these use cases. The first example is in banking and finance. So 3 different examples. The first one is detecting hidden defectors, which is an interesting term, but essentially what this client wanted to do is to proactively identify customers who have bank accounts who are going to kind of up and run, right? So everything seems fine, but then there might be a pattern where they stop using the account as much, and then one day they shut things down, they withdraw the money, and they walk away because that's a loss for the bank, right? And then acquiring a new customer is actually quite expensive. So if you want to think about this from a retention standpoint, it's a customer retention use case. So being able to build a model ultimately, which is what was done, to identify those accounts or those folks who are at risk of attrition. The second use case here is around detecting fraud and or loan default. And fraud is one of the biggest pillars in the banking and finance industry where data science can help, right? Because one individual sifting through the data trying to find out a fraudulent transaction, for example, it takes forever. Whereas the machine learning can go through, pick up patterns and trends, and basically tell you the likelihood of something being fraudulent. So I've seen this with our clients, at the transactional level. Check kiting is an example at the retail bank side. Trade fraud, and this is sometimes an internal problem, so it's not always external bad offenders. This could be an internal problem, as well as money laundering. Being able to detect any one of those is something that we've worked on with clients. The second piece of the fraud is, well, I shouldn't say fraud, it's default, right? It's kind of a different side of the coin. Especially at the retail side, underwriting a loan, again, is expensive, and you're hoping that you're going to get a return on this. But our client wanted to know if a loan was at risk for default, so they could get ahead of it. So they understand if there was a loss that was coming, or if there was something they could proactively do to help someone out, right? Do you need a deferral? Do you need a change in the underwriting to help you out? This actually has been going on right now, especially with COVID. I think a lot of folks have gotten assistance from their banks on loan payments, and they're using models to help identify, who they should be helping out. And finally, the last use case that we've seen with our clients is on the marketing side, which is kind of a traditional use case for the data science space. But basically, doing some work to help target either new prospects or existing customers with personalized marketing. And that's from the finance folks, I've spoken with. The personalization is very important because, people are inundated with a lot of information. So whether it's on an app, a mobile app, having some information that's pushed out, or when you walk into a branch and on the terminal, the cashier or the teller brings up some information about you, and it shows, you should offer this particular promotion to this client who's walked in. One client in particular, they were interested in cross-sell opportunities, because they do have people physically walk into their bank branches, and they wanted to know, hey, this person has been a long-term checking and savings customer, but they've never taken out a loan with us. So maybe we should talk to them about that. Maybe they want to do some home improvement, or they need an auto loan, or what have you, and we can give them a better rate, and then we get that business. So that's one of the use cases we've seen with banking. Moving on, consumer product goods and retail. Across both of those, we have clients who have done demand forecasting, right? So down potentially to the SKU level to understand forecasts and projections for sales. That's a very important and of interest use case for our clients. Another use case we've seen is identifying those products that might be at risk of decline, right? So if you have a whole portfolio of SKUs, can we identify or predict the ones that are really going downhill that we need to do something about? And it might be intervention with marketing dollars, or it might actually be phasing out products. We have a client who that was the decision point, right? It was how much more do we invest? How much do we just say, you know what, let's cut our losses and get rid of something? One particular client, what was interesting, we found there were a couple of products that were literally like a year old. They were brand new, but they were already in a sharp decline. And so it was a hard decision about whether or not to invest or just pull them from the market. And then finally, detecting supply chain disruptions. And there are lots of ways that we can do this. But if you're working with vendors, timeliness and quality of materials, we've seen with our clients basically identifying or predicting if there are vendors who you might need to either not use or renegotiate your contract because they're not necessarily meeting their SLAs, and the quality of materials are suspect. Also, we've had clients who we've helped to do shipping projections. So if they're actually shipping out materials or a package, being able to actually project the likelihood of shipping on time because it costs them money if they don't ship on time. So that was an interesting use case. And then out of stock, this is a very common one. Use case, can we predict which items are going to stock out? Because the last thing you want is for a customer to come on site and they go to the shelves and nothing's there, which I'm sure we have all experienced if you go grocery shopping during COVID. I think this is a major challenge right now, especially. And it's a supply chain disruption that we're seeing. All right, education. Three kind of main use cases that we see with our clients. Student acquisition. So identifying the best profiles of the candidates who are likely to actually attend, or who you might want to make an offer to. That's a big one. And also identifying those folks who are going to succeed on time, because you want to invest in the people who are actually going to make it through a program on time. Kind of the other side of that coin is student retention. And we've had clients, multiple clients, who they want to know if a student is at risk of dropping out at different points in time. And in a lot of cases, it's the first semester of college. For any folks who have kids in college right now, that first semester of the freshman year is actually really critical. And we've done models to predict who's likely to actually make it through the first semester. So if you make it through that, you're more likely to make it through the first year, and so on. So that's an interesting one. The secondary step for that is, can we provide intervention recommendations? And this gets to some of that optimization. So having a series of recommendations. One client, basically, if that we had their model, if it predicted someone was at risk of failing, they had a note automatically routed to the advisor for that student saying, hey, alert, the student's at risk, you need to meet with them right now. So that's an example. And then finally, donor management. So being able to generate a list of alumni who are good prospects for giving, and you've probably received phone calls, emails, what have you, about donating money. But and a lot of times colleges just have freshmen with a list of contact information, say go reach out. But kind of a smarter way to do that, what we found with clients, is to actually build a model that helps you identify these are the people who you should be talking to, and this is how much they're likely to give. And we found with some clients that there are some hidden people there who could actually give money who they hadn't tapped into yet for whatever reason, the networks they hadn't picked up. So that's an interesting use case. Energy and utilities. We've had clients who are interested in improving forecasting. And a lot of times in this space, it's long-term forecasting. So we had a client who wanted to forecast for capital planning. We had to forecast out 25 years into the future. From a statistical standpoint, it was a little dicey when you get that far out, but closer into the funnel, we were able to get some good results. As well as automating data processing and deployment of the results. That was really important as well for our client. More recently, with everything happening, there's an interest in detecting risk, specifically in energy trades, which is kind of like falls in the finance bucket too, but it's specifically to energy and utility commodities. So that's a new use case we've been seeing. Entertainment and hospitality. Don mentioned earlier, hospitality has been really hit hard with COVID, but we have had some interesting use cases with our clients over the years, and we're continuing to pursue them currently. The first thing we've seen is the impact of weather on events, and I'll talk about weather a little bit later, but we've had some clients where we've looked at the relationship between weather and ticket sales for the venue, and we have actually found relationships. We can see what type of days are more likely to result in higher ticket sales or lower ticket sales. They can understand, not just from a revenue standpoint, how much money they're likely to make, but also staffing, which is huge. How many people do they actually need, not just at maybe the core venue, but any ancillary things. So food and beverage is impacted, from a supply standpoint, as well as staffing. Security is impacted. So it was really interesting to see that kind of cascade down through the business decisions. Marketing mix modeling. So this essentially is just identifying the best channels and content for marketing, and specifically to look out new customers. So we did an interesting model to find new prospects, new guests to visit, using the data that they had. And then cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So identifying those folks who are most likely to return, right? Because any of these places, the entertainment and hospitality vendors, they don't want you to just come once. They really want you to do a repeat business if that's possible. So, we've done some models to understand who's likely to actually be a returner. How much are they going to spend? What's their lifetime value for us? And where might they spend more money? If they have a hotel room with us, can we incent them to spend money at the hotel restaurant, for example? All right, insurance, tons of use cases here. Just quickly, risk detection during underwriting. So we've helped clients identify applicants who they should not underwrite, or if they do, they should increase the premiums because they're riskier. Detecting fraud during claims processing. So can we identify claims that are likely fraudulent? And if we do, what's the likelihood of us recovering money if we've paid something out? Churn. So identifying policyholders who are going to cancel. Segmentation for marketing. Again, identifying groups within the customer base who they can target for promotional offers, which I just kind of talked about the one example before. And predicting profitability, that same client who, I gave the example about, we also did a kind of secondary step to predict the profitability of the policyholders. And so we can see not just kind of as a group how people shake out, but at an individual level when it comes time for renewal, do they need to adjust the rate at all or run a promotion for those folks who look like they're more profitable, and what do they do about the subset who are definitely riskier? So that's an interesting use case. Manufacturing.
Liz?
Yep.
Liz, this is Don. I know you're trying to crank through, but on insurance,
yes.
I know you built a model recently that was really exciting around predicting folks that would renew or would not renew.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah,
sure. I think we're planning on building a future webinar, but you could comment on it.
Yes, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about this more, but we had looked at how to better predict those individuals who were going to cancel a specific policy type. And, we got some good model results for that, where from a business standpoint, we could basically identify 80% of the individuals who were likely to cancel their policies. And from a revenue standpoint, it was millions of dollars. It was over $1 million of revenue that was potentially at risk. Now, you also had to balance out how much those people cost you, right, from a loss standpoint. So we looked at the loss ratio as well to understand. But even with that, there were interesting groups within the population based on the data inputs, and it wasn't something that you would just kind of off the top of your head think of necessarily. It was combinations of age, income, et cetera, aspects of the policy that were important. But there's definitely a subset where if you're able to intervene with those folks, you can save the company a lot of money. Because like I said before, it's really expensive to acquire new customers. So yeah, Don, thanks. That was a good use case. I only have a couple more here. I'm going to buzz right through manufacturing, being able to proactively identify production line downtime, which is super important. That's related to predictive maintenance. So can we use sensor and other data from the historian to be able to actually identify in time or before time when something's going to go wrong on the production line? And we've had several clients we've worked with on this. The second piece here is visual inspection, which is actually an AI component. So being able to automatically detect issues with parts and products during assembly using visual imagery and an AI model to do that for you, so that in real time, you can have someone on a tablet basically have an alert and say, hey, there's something wrong with this weld, there's something wrong with this particular component, we need to stop or pull that off for remediation. So that's kind of a cool use case, and David Russell, who's on the line here, has done a very interesting webinar about that. So we can chat more about that if you want to as well. Final use case I want to talk about is another AI use case. This is really cross-industry. We've worked with several clients on this, and that's the use of a virtual assistant. And the two main areas that we've seen so far with our clients that have been of interest is on the internal front, using a virtual assistant to help answer maybe policy or benefit information. So if you can, just chatting with a virtual assistant to ask about, how much vacation time do I have left, or what's our policy on this? That's something we've seen. The other piece internally, you can support folks who need to sift through a lot of information. So like a call center agent or something like that. It basically can automate crawling through documentation and providing a response. So it's a time saver. From an external standpoint, we've seen this streamline the customer interaction, improve customer sat, because they don't sit on a line for 30 minutes. They're routed pretty quickly with the assistant. It reduces the call time by quite a significant amount, and it can reduce the costs. In this case, we've seen call centers benefit from this. So I've gone a little over time, but David, do we have any questions?
We'll just ask one of the questions we have. So the question is, looking at all these different use cases and some of the clients that we've worked with, you see like a common thread in how they got started in their journey and trying to achieve the goals that they have achieved with these different use cases?
A common thread, yeah. I think for all of them, to Don's point earlier, it all started with a business problem, and it started small, right? So every single one of those use cases, which is a conversation with a client about, hey, we're having this issue, is this something you think we could test? And we just ran a test to get started. So hopefully it's a quick answer, but hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, well, hopefully the next presenter will be fine with losing a little time here, but I'll let you move ahead.
No, I'm going to hustle through here, David. I'm going to get you your 3:40 time slot, so don't you worry. All right, so I'm going to power through. But I did want to spend time on the use cases because I thought that would be of interest to folks. you know, how we can help, of course, we'd love to chat with you if you want to talk through more use cases that are relevant for your business. All right, so last piece.